gotta look out for jaywalkers. The cops aren't writing people up like they used to. So what's next? Eating your lunch in the middle of the road? Right here is California's state capital, where the governor lives. Or, goes to work. And right in front of his office, I'm about to jaywalk across the street. You'd think that would get me a ticket.
Jaywalking is no longer a crime here in California.
A new state law says that you don't need one of these to cross the street.
Is this a return to the Old West for 26 million drivers? So you read that headline and think, great, California's so crazy, people are going to be jaywalking across the freeway now. Well, just because I didn't get a ticket just now doesn't mean it's still not illegal. So this kid, a bike messenger, he's pedaling around the corner when Mrs. Dickerson's chauffeur cuts the corner and runs him over. Well, the chauffeur jumps out and asks the kid, "Are you okay?" And this is 1905, so the kid screams,
"Dad, burn you! You're on the wrong side of the road, you Jay! Don't you know nothing?"
A Jay is a derogatory term for a country bumpkin. Out in the open country, you can drive your wagon any way you want to. The trouble was when people drove like they were in the country, but they were in the middle of the city, driving their common buggy or privileged motor car like they're some kind of a hick. Earning them the nickname Jay Driver. Since pretty much the dawn of humanity, city streets have basically been malls, people walking around on foot to engage in commerce, so foot traffic was priority one. They would have laughed at the idea that walking across the street could be a crime. So if I took my car and drove it into the mall, Blues Brothers style, I don't think any rational person would say, "Attention shoppers, please step aside so Rob can drive through here in his car." Like malls, old-timey city streets were meant for people. But what if every day hundreds of people started driving their cars through the mall? And then thousands of people brought their cars and started driving it around inside the mall. But by the 1910s, that's exactly what was happening in every American city. In 1905, Mrs. Dickerson's car was one of only 77,000 in the entire country. Then Henry Ford's employees did what Americans do best: sell a lot of stuff really cheap. They shoved out another 4 million cars to people's driveways and garages. People drove their cars downtown, and soon the city streets didn't feel like a pedestrian mall anymore.
Take a car, no matter how near or how far.
Cars were changing the city forever, and cars were hot new technologies. So people just let the city change. They were enthusiastic watching the city change, even when people on foot started to get hit by cars. And cities started cracking down. Plenty of new rules for all those new drivers, things like speed limits. But some people on foot continued to just step out into the street anytime they pleased without looking, like they always had. Sometimes even with a nose stuck in a newspaper. And of course, those newspapers split these people into two categories: the careless, who just weren't paying attention, and those who walked right out into traffic to assert their dominance over the automobile, like they always had. Both earned their own Jay nickname, Jayhawks. People guilty of reading, talking, strollering, wearing black, darting, snoring, goofing around. In retrospect, it's all kind of comical, but it wasn't a laughing matter at the time. Cars were killing people who weren't paying attention to them. Davenport, Iowa, at the time, if you took all the humans and the chickens and the cows, you'd maybe get 50,000 inhabitants. And all of them seemed to like wandering out onto busy highways and city streets. And so lives were ending way too soon, way too often. So the city council decided to get tough. Jayhawks became Jaywalks, and the city council banned it. No more crossing diagonally, no more crossing in the middle of the block, no more ambling out without looking. Jaywalk, jaywalk, jaywalk. When the city of Los Angeles passed their anti-jaywalking ordinance in 1925, it turned out to be surprisingly popular. Parents now had predictable rules to teach their kids, motorists saw less delay, and police responded to fewer fatal crashes. Pretty much every other city in America passed their own anti-jaywalking ban and sort of forgot about it. And it might partly explain how every downtown sort of ended up looking like this.
Traffic this morning outbound Kennedy is not doing so well at the moment. They've got a stall at Wilson Avenue, have an accident, making it a real downer from 63rd to 51st on the Ryan.
Today, these are some of the laws that are on the books in California, and technically still on the books in California. Like Motor Vehicle Code sections 21, 45, 1, 2, and 3 say, do start crossing when the light is green, but don't start crossing when the light turns red. And section 2146.2 says everybody has to obey that red and green light. Not just pedestrians, it's also people driving automobiles, streetcars, even people riding animals. But most stoplights in California have more than just the red and green ball. Vehicle Code 2145.6 defines the walk and don't walk signs. Legally, you can start walking when it says walk, but you're jaywalking if you start walking when it says don't walk. So what about in between, when the don't walk sign is blinking? Even though the drivers of cars still have their green light to keep going, it was illegal in California to start crossing the street after the white walk sign had gone away and that counter started. Illegal. You could get a ticket, even if you were a healthy, grade A kind of pedestrian who'd have no problem getting across in 20 seconds. A violation that doesn't really create any harm, but if you do get caught, it's a $200 ticket. $500 after court fees. During the 2010s, over 5,000 pedestrians a year got tickets just in downtown LA for this. The law changed in 2018 when the state assembly said, okay, you can start crossing while it's blinking, but you have to make it across before it's a solid do not walk. It's been a popular change, and it started getting people hungry for even more change. Because still on the books, Vehicle Code 2195.5, that's the creme de la creme of jaywalking law. If you're on a street that's controlled by a bunch of stop signs, you can cross the street legally anywhere you want to as long as the street is clear. But that changes as soon as you see a traffic signal. In downtown areas where there's block after block of stoplights, the law said it was illegal to cross the street in the middle of the block where there wasn't a crosswalk. If you can see the light, you have to use it. There's no crosswalk here, so that's going to get you a big ticket. But a healthy shopping area means people are crossing the street all the time. Keep writing your customers $200 tickets, and they might just take their shopping someplace else. But this section of Motor Vehicle Code in California is so vague, it extends well beyond downtown. There are sections of road that are controlled by stoplights, even ones separated by ridiculous distances. Technically, it even applied out here, where stoplights can be a mile apart from one another. And I'm sorry, I don't care how lean a pedestrian is, nobody's going to waddle half a mile that way, cross at the stoplight, and then come half a mile back.
I'm a bird. Truth is, you ain't even got the nerve. Bird.
Yo, chicken! I got a video to shoot here.
Bird.
Okay, where was I?
Bird.
No. Nobody's going to walk half a mile down to the stoplight and walk half a mile back. They're going to jaywalk every single time. And that's where the problem starts. Ambiguity in the law leaves the patrol officer with a lot of discretion to choose to write a ticket or not. And sometimes these jaywalking encounters turn foul. Here's a simple jaywalking ticket that ends with the jaywalker shot. So what happened? Kurt Reinhold was 42, no place to live, so he was sleeping after hours at the swimming pool complex near the beach. Sheriff's deputies told him he couldn't do that. Next day, one of the same deputies spots him crossing against a red hand, Vehicle Code 21456. So the deputy flips on his lights and rolls up on Kurt. And it doesn't go well.
Get on the sidewalk. Because you're jaywalking. Get over on the sidewalk. Where? Right there. It's an intersection. Where? It's a controlled intersection. What intersection? This side of the street from this west, from that place. Right there. So right there. Who are you?
21954, you can't stand in the middle of the street. Kurt, unarmed, no drugs, no alcohol, but clearly non-compliant and not in a good place, grabs the deputy's gun in the scuffle. And that's how Vehicle Code meant to save a life spins out of control and takes one. Well, takes three. A situation where the jaywalker, the officer, and the general public all lose.
Advocates arguing maybe the jaywalking law
Is doing more harm than good. Back in 1983, police officers in the Big Apple wrote about 500 jaywalking tickets in a year. The Windy City wrote none, but the City of Angels wrote 40,747 jaywalking tickets. You would hope that all of those tickets would help, but unfortunately, LA and Chicago had a similar pedestrian death rate. So now, 40 years later, maybe California should copy Virginia.
Tonight, our top story, jaywalking.
The Old Dominion had just become the first U.S. state to decriminalize it. And California advocates found a friendly ear in the state assembly. Analysis from law enforcement agencies showed an African-American Californian is far more likely to get stopped for a jaywalking infraction than everybody else in the state.
So he brought his first round of legislation to the Assembly.
And in 2021, Assembly Bill 1238
by Assemblymember Ting and others, snack lanes and pedestrians,
would repeal nearly a dozen vehicle codes.
Pull up on the roll. All members vote.
Governing jaywalking and pedestrians. The bill passed.
All of those definitions disappearing for 10 years until 2029.
And that's where AB 1238 got itself into some trouble. No rules means no rules. So if somebody wanted to throw themselves a nice picnic in the middle of the street, there would be incredible legal ambiguity if, say, a car zoomed down the street and ran the picnicker over. Well,
that creates a bit of a problem because who's really at fault if there's no traffic code at all?
For that reason, the governor refused to sign it, saying he appreciated the idea but worried it might egg on people to cross in dangerous places. But he would be open to signing a different bill. So, advocates wrote one.
So what if instead of trashing the pedestrian traffic code, what if we kept it and instead separated the jaywalkers into two types? One, people who cross when there's a gap in traffic or there's no cars there, and a second group who meander out into the street when there's immediate danger of a collision with a moving vehicle. And then only empower police officers to write a ticket to that second group.
And so that's what advocates and the bill's sponsor did.
Thank you, Madam Chair. AB 2147 is our Freedom to Walk Act.
It would keep intact all the existing vehicle code, but add this language. A peace officer shall not stop a pedestrian for a violation of this section unless a reasonably careful person would realize there's an immediate danger of a collision with a moving vehicle or a bicycle. Jaywalking would still be a crime. You just couldn't get a ticket for it unless you're making people slam on their brakes.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association, oftentimes pedestrians and motorists are only protected by adherence to clear laws under a presumption that violations will be sanctioned. For these reasons, we respectfully oppose. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the room wishing to testify for or against?
Dan Allison, a person who walks in support.
Well, I'll just say that if I was not going to jaywalk, I have to walk a half a mile out of my way because there's no legal crosswalks. I'm a woman walking by myself in downtown Sacramento, and I'd rather just keep moving.
The bill passed committee, both houses, and this time the governor signed it. So if there's no risk of an immediate collision, jaywalking is now decriminalized in California.
So is this a good thing or not? Well, we just don't know yet.
But the bill does require the California Highway Patrol and the University of California to track crash data and to report back to the legislature in the year 2028.
Over the next few years, it'll be really interesting to look at the traffic safety data and pedestrian fatality counts and see what exactly happened now that California's decriminalized jaywalking. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a street to cross. Oh, no!
The chicken wants you to subscribe. Thank you for being one of the 100,000 people who clicked subscribe. And if you enjoyed the last 15 minutes of your life, thank the super fans who pay a couple bucks each month on Patreon so we can have more jaywalking chickens and fewer VPN ads.